What is all this stuff?
Missing 411.
Uh-oh.
Coming back at you, got some missing 411, I guess, cases and some thoughts. I was reading through the most recent book by David Paulides, Missing 411, Law, Land, Air, and Water. And towards the back of the book, he put, I think, 3 or 4 cases that I don't think he officially categorized as traditional missing 411 cases, which the traditional missing 411 cases, like, you know, the person goes missing, the body usually winds up in water or near large fields of granite or some granite deposit or large rock deposit, or dogs and canines can't find their scent. Wasn't a traditional missing 411 cases in the back of the book there, but I found one and started digging around and found some interesting things. So I'll give you a rundown on this case. This case is from 1996, and the guy who went missing is Craig Guymon. He was an elk hunter. He was 47 years old, and he wound up dying of hypothermia. So the story behind this is that he was out elk hunting with one of his friends. He had his rifle with him. He thought he shot an elk with his rifle, so he dismounted from his horse to go check it out. His friend waited around for quite a while, but Craig never showed back up. So they formed a search and rescue party, and they found him 2 days later on October 8th. It appeared as though Craig fell out of a tree and began crawling. He had a broken femur. He had other broken bones. And the curious thing about this is that he used his belt to kind of tie himself to the tree so he wouldn't fall out. And his boots, his coat, and hat were still up in the tree. And mind you, this is October and in Wyoming. I'm assuming it's fairly chilly out there. So I'm not sure what would compel you to take off your boots and your jacket in October, especially at night in Wyoming. So the guy died, but he didn't die of the fall or anything, or starvation. He died of hypothermia. And the weird thing about this particular one is that he did have a rifle. He was a hunter, but his friend never recalled hearing 3 shots being fired. So if you're out in the woods and you're lost or in distress, you crack off 3 shots, Joe, so you can let people know, hey, I'm in trouble and come find me. I'm over here. Never happened with this guy. Now, during this little passage, David Paulides mentioned another case. He mentioned the case of Donald Schrum from 1964. And Joe, this is a crazy one. So David Paulides mentioned this particular event because this is a story of a man who was out elk hunting as well and shimmied up a tree to get away from all the craziness that was going on around him. So I'll give you a rundown of Donald Schrum. This is you can guys look this up. This happened out in Cisco Grove. I'll see if I can bring the actual place of where it took place on the screen. So this is out in California where it happened. And it happened near a place called Devil's Peak in Tahoe. If anybody pays attention to the Missing 411 stuff, there's a lot of things that happen around places with the name Devil in them. So this happened near Devil's Peak. So this guy, Donald, was out on a hunting trip with a couple of his buddies, and he wound up getting separated from the group, the other 2 people. And as night fell, he decided to sleep the night away up in a tree for safety, because out there he has heard stories that, oh yeah, there are bears around here. Just go up into a tree, tie yourself off, and you'll at least protect yourself from any kind of natural predators out there. So as he went up the tree, and began to tie himself off to the tree, he saw a zigzagging white light in the sky. He at first thought it was a helicopter. He went missing. He didn't know exactly where his other friends were, and he thought they sent out search and rescue for him. He thought it was a helicopter, but it wasn't. The object came down and stopped about 50 yards away from him, hovering in the sky just above the canyon. The object was cigar in shape, but had windows or panels that moves, and this whole thing moves silently. So you got like a big cigar-shaped UFO moving silently, and definitely not a helicopter. He has pretty clear recollection of this entire event. He said it was much bigger than a helicopter. He said it zoomed briefly away. It came back, but when it came back, it had a scout ship with it. At least that's how he put it, is that it wasn't the main mothership. It was a smaller scout ship that detached from this much larger cigar-shaped UFO. And this scout ship wound up landing down about 50 yards away from him. So at that point in time, Donald was like, screw this, I'm going back up into the tree. He came down initially from the tree because he thought he was being rescued when he saw the initial light in the sky. But no, he wasn't being rescued. He is having a UFO encounter. So as one might do, you get up into a tree for safety when UFOs appear.
I know. No, everybody knows that aliens can't climb trees.
Yeah, it's common knowledge at this point. But this is back in 1964. And mind you, this guy, Donald Schrum, didn't really pay attention to UFOs. He was a pretty, I would say, straight ahead, didn't really go off the beaten path kind of guy. He worked for a company, Aerojet, that had numerous missile contracts with the United States government. So this guy, no dummy, had a good career going, didn't really spend a lot of times indulging in thoughts of UFOs. So the scout ship lands down about 50 yards away. Donald goes back up into the tree. At that point, after he saw two humanoids start to approach him. Now, these two humanoids, he said they were about 5 feet tall, dressed in tightly fitting, light-colored one-piece uniforms. They both had two large circular eyes that made it seem like the creatures were wearing like like welder's goggles. That's how he put it. And they were just going around collecting samples of stuff. It didn't seem like they were paying Donald much attention. They didn't pay any attention to the human in the tree crapping his pants at the sight of UFOs. And at that point, like, Donald's status, like, I'm just trying to remain silent. I'm trying to just pray that they don't notice me up here while they collect rocks and lizards, whatever they got to do. I'm just going to stay quiet and maybe they'll just go away. Well, the two humanoid figures wound up approaching his tree. And they made it to the base of the tree and they started to look up at him. As if
Is Devil's Peak that one that's like super flat on top?
I'm not sure. It looks absolutely beautiful. It's in Tahoe. You can just type, if you go to Google Maps.
Devil's Tower.
Yeah, Devil's Tower. That's in, I believe, either one of the Dakotas, I believe. But yeah, Devil's Tower was featured in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
Very famous. I've been there. It's absolutely.
It looks crazy as hell. Did you get up on the top? I'd love to get up there.
I was probably, I would say 8 at that time, and my parents decided to do that drive across the country like the Griswold family in National Lampoon's Vacation, and we all hopped in the station wagon, and one of our first stops was out there, and I didn't go up to the top. There were rock climbers scaling the side of Devil's Tower, and it was just crazy.
That's what Cretchet is saying. That's the only way up there. There's no trails unless you got a helicopter or something like that. You ain't getting up there.
Yeah. It was just mind-boggling that this thing just juts out from the earth. And one of the things I do remember about that was the Native American folklore around that how those gouges got in the side of the rock is, according to like one of the Native American folklores, a giant bear was trying to scale up, and all those straight marks are from like giant bear marks. I found that to be fascinating. That one little piece stuck with me for 40 years, not anything else. So back to Donald Schrum in a tree with 2 humanoid aliens below him.
Collecting lizards and rocks.
They were collecting lizard rocks. They saw Donald in the tree. It's like, hey, look at that human over there. Let's go check him out. So that now they're standing below the tree he was in, and they looked up at him. And what Donald noticed is that he started to hear things as if there was some sort of communication going on between these 2 entities and the ship. It sounded to him, it sounded like almost like owl noises, like cooing or hooting sounds. They would make it, and then they would hear some sort of transmission from the ship. After that, it seems like these humanoids really didn't care that much about him, and they went about their business a little bit. And then he said, after some time passed, then a robot showed up coming through the brush, and from the same direction as the 2 humanoids, a robot showed up with glowing red eyes, and that kind of illuminated the robotic face of this thing, where it kind of had like a protruding lower jaw, almost like a traditional like 50s kind of science fiction robot. And like all the descriptions he's giving look like almost like props from like the 50s and 60s, like those science fiction movies you'd see. Maybe that's the only thing he could relate to at the time when he was describing these creatures. But when it wasn't like anything far-fetched, everything he was describing looked like they could have been out of like an Ed Wood movie. So the robot shows up with glowing red eyes that illuminated his face and jaw. It was either covered in metallic material or it was just like a robot with, metal. It was about the same height as the others, but it moved very mechanically. It wasn't fluid like it was organic. Didn't move like me or you. It kind of it undulated like it was driven mechanically. At this point, Donald remembers being rendered unconscious by what the robot breathed out of his mouth. So the robot approached the bottom of the tree. The robot, I guess, looked up a little bit, and this white mist came out from the robot's mouth, and Donald kind of passed out. He said he passed out for a few minutes and woke up. And when he woke up,
doesn't have to like have it come out of the mouth if it's a robot. Doesn't even need a mouth.
That's the thing. That's what makes this story so interesting. Why wouldn't the mist come out of like the forearms or out of some sort of rifle? Why does it come out of the mouth? That's a very peculiar detail. But he remembers it coming out, like the mist coming out of the mouth, him passing out, waking up, and he immediately starts to dry heave, like he's kind of trying to puke or something. And when he wakes up, he sees like the 2 humanoids trying to scale up the tree to get to him. And he would try to fend them off by stomping down, moving the tree, at which point they got frustrated and didn't try to go up any further. This continued to happen a few times, at which point Donald said, enough of this, I'm not passing out anymore. He took out his bow and he racked it back and shot an arrow at the robot, hitting it right in the chest, causing sparks to fly. He managed to shoot off 2 more arrows, and it kind of staggered the robot guy back a little bit, but didn't really appear to do any damage.
Yep.
I mean, it's tough to hurt a robot with a bow and arrow. And there are stories.
Why didn't he do it with the aliens?
So his rationale is that the aliens, the 2 humanoids, weren't directly doing anything to him, so he didn't feel compelled to shoot them. He figured that since the robot was breathing this mist, causing him to pass out and wake up, that he was the main aggressor here. That was his rationale. I don't know if I would buy that in that situation. I would feel like they're all accomplices in a potential abduction at this point.
Yeah.
And especially you use the bow and arrow on the fleshy thing. Yeah.
And then you piss on the robot. Here's your sample.
I'm with you there. That makes more sense to me.
You short that thing out.
Yeah, that makes much more sense to me. But that's not what he did. He fired 3 arrows, wasting all his arrows basically on a robot that didn't, it just kind of deflected off. So Donald started to get a little bit more frustrated at this point. So he had some matches with him, and he just lit some matchbooks and started throwing them down at the robot and 2 humanoids. This seemed to kind of perplex them, and they're like, they backed off a little bit, going like, I don't know. I don't know if I like fire too much. We're going to leave that human alone for a little bit. Maybe he'll stop. And so they let him burn his matches, at which point they reapproached the tree, and Donald started freaking out again. So he started to tear off pieces of his clothing, started to burn that, throw that down at them. He took off his hat, set his hat on fire, threw it at him. They didn't like that. So the robots and the humanoids like, oh, Jesus, let's wait for him to stop burning things. Then maybe we could abduct him.
Cratchit is saying shoes. What about the shoes?
The shoes,
he didn't throw his shoes?
I think he threw everything he could. In fact, he had a pocket full of, he had some coins in his pocket, and the last item that he started to really chuck at these things was coins. He threw some coins down at these aliens, wherever they are. They bounced off, at which point that perplexed them. They started to collect the coins. Like they didn't care about anything else. They decided to collect the coins. Like they thought that was interesting. So they took those. It's like, hey, you going to give us some money? Cool. We'll take that.
Good luck finding a change machine.
Yeah, you're not going to find one of those in Alpha Centauri, pal.
Yeah.
Those are
I can't
U.S.
even find one around here.
Yeah. Yeah, no crap. So this scene continued for most of the night until a second robot showed up. A second robot showed up, joined with the first robot at the base of the tree. They somehow communicated with each other electronically. Lightning bolt shot between them, and then both at the same time, mist rose out of both of their mouths, consuming much of the tree, rising up, at which point Donald just passed out. And the next thing he knows, he woke up, still tied to the tree at the top, and he was rescued that next day. And he believes that he wasn't abducted because he put up a fight, and that the white vapor, for whatever reason, initially wasn't working on him. And so if you parallel that story that I just told you about Donald Schrum, about him fighting off aliens by using everything that he possibly could, tying himself to the tree, it mimics kind of what David Paulides was talking about with Craig Guymon in 1996. Although Guymon wound up falling out of the tree, he couldn't maintain, either jumping out of the tree or falling out of the tree. But he wound up dying of hypothermia. Donald Schrum did not. He managed to stay alive. Although he did say in his book, he did contemplate throwing himself off the cliff because he was so consumed with fear. He didn't know how to navigate this situation. He doesn't know how to fight robots, Joe. And since he didn't know how to fight robots, he contemplated suicide. But he didn't do it.
Well, that's like a whole special, you have to go through a separate course.
That's a different set of training. And typically you don't get that kind of training in 1964 just being an elk hunter. That's a very particular type of training.
No. I minored in robot fighting.
Yeah, that was my side class.
Yeah.
You can get a side class. You can do that in, I think, Skyrim. So one of the weird coincidences about this is that first off, I skipped ahead real quick. That another member of his hunting team. So when Donald went missing, there's a UFO in the sky. Well, another member of his party that night did see a UFO. He chalked it up to a very slow-moving, low shooting star. That's what he chalked it up to. But years later, Donald and his wife decided to move away from that area. They just wanted to kind of start new. And just by sheer coincidence, they moved in to a house that was owned by his hunting partner, Vince. So just weird stuff like that. So that's the two stories I have for Missing 411 that kind of go together. But I did stumble across some other weird stuff. Like, I won't go into this at any length today. It might be another segment. But a lot of times when people are in the presence of something paranormal, whether it's like a crop circle, a UFO, a lot of times people will see like a white owl or hear owl noises before or after that encounter. Happens all the time. There's a whole book written about that. It's called Stories from Messengers, Owls, UFOs, and a Deeper Reality. I'll do a whole other segment on it at that point, some point in time. But also, Joe, you have owls at the Bohemian Grove.
Yes.
Don't they have Moloch? Is that the guy's name that they pray to over there?
I believe that's right. Yeah. The idea being that this is a predator, a meat eater, a hunter that can see in the darkness.
Yeah. The owl is a very interesting animal in the occult. It's used like a lot. And so Bohemian Grove, they use it for a variety of different reasons. I don't even know if I can bring up the reasons here. But there's so many different like little owl things that go on in paranormal and the supernatural and occult. So anyone at least familiar with Bohemian Grove has come across the claim that a 40-foot stone owl is referenced as Moloch, associated with child sacrifice in the Bible and Arabic tradition. The owl, however, to the Bohemian Club as well, has traditionally symbolized wisdom, where there's no ancient description of what Moloch idol actually looked like. Relatively modern representations have invariably depicted a bull-headed statue throughout history. In fact, not once was Moloch ever associated with an owl until, that is, the age of the internet. So, kind of clear that up right there.
Yeah, Cretch had shared a link to a website talking about the significance of the owl as it pertains, and this is in Carrot Shop, to the occult and Illuminati. Talks about Justin Bieber to start. I don't give a crap, blah, blah, blah.
You don't care about Justin Bieber and owls?
The winged creature that many view as a representation of wisdom actually has a range of associations that include secrets, mystery, mysticism, and a connection to the underworld, keeper of secrets. It's not a coincidence that the owl serves as a symbol of the secret society called Bohemian Grove, an elite men's club. We know what that is. The club has been shrouded in a cloud of mystery, blah, 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 blah. We don't need to get into that. The Native Americans also see owls as being a keeper of sacred knowledge, as well as value the bird's ability to see at night. It is this characteristic of the creature that Native Americans call upon during ceremonies when a vision of secret knowledge is needed. A messenger of secrets, linked to death in the underworld. Mineral seals. The mineral seals. What is that word?
I'm not looking at it. And you're a better reader than I am.
Minerval. Whatever. When it comes to the Bavarian Order of the Illuminati, owl symbolism played a role with the secret society associated with the Minerval Academy, known as one of the early foundations of the society. There have been medallions and other artistic depictions that have incorporated the owl to represent the Minervals. Only a few examples of such exist, which were worn around the necks of Minerval initiates. The design centered on an owl holding an open book. Interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy. The whole book, Stories from Messengers, it relates to what the owls could represent. It's just, a lot of times the white owl with large eyes, if you look at it very quickly, that might look like a gray alien or something like that. So I'll pull some clips from the audiobook and we'll go over it at some point in time. It goes very, very deep. But I don't want to stick on the owl thing too much. I just have one more kind of related story to what I talked about with Craig's story and Donald Schrum, the guy who was in the tree fighting aliens and robots.
Yeah, so, and Cretch shared one more thing where he says that there are owls on the Epstein Island. And in fact, there are when you go and you look at the Ellen DeGeneres set building, or whichever came first, that blue and white building with the false front that's probably like a secret downward layer kind of deal. There is a giant owl, gold owl. I don't know.
That whole place, man, is just crazy.
That whole place is a giant pedo command base.
That island probably actually is the Epstein Island. Absolutely, a giant pedo command base.
Yeah,
that's definitely probably true. So I'll bring up the story on screen real quick. This is a headline: The CIA simulated UFO abductions in Latin America as psychological warfare experiments. Dr. Jacques Vallée. notable ufologist. I'll post this link in the description because this is not unlike what people speculate with MILABs, military abductions. So this is fascinating. This is like from Jack Vlay talking about this stuff in like in the 90s. And just some quotes here. I've secured a document confirming that the CIA simulated UFO abductions in Latin America, Brazil, and Argentina as a psychological warfare experiments. And he is on record talking with some colonels and other people within the Air Force, kind of confirming this. So as part of this, he's, quote, "I'm convinced the government is working on UFOs," he told me. "What are the chances sub-witnesses are being fooled by special effects developed by psychological warfare experiments?" I countered. Thinking of cases like Bentwaters in the UK or Clergy Pontus in France. "They're pretty good," he admitted. "Suppose you shine a weak infrared laser into people's eyes. It won't hurt them, but it may induce hallucinatory effects. Experiments have been done where you can send microwave beams through someone's brain. You pick up and transmit energy patterns. You can influence people. This way, even make them hear things. Holograms have been used too." So this is an article that came out just a few days ago to kind of give light to what Jack Verley was talking about in the 1990s, almost like a Project Bluebeam kind of situation. And so, I don't know if I believe this, but okay, if they're doing psychological experiments in Latin America, they're dressing up CIA people to look like aliens, or they're using some kind of technology to fool Latin Americans into thinking that there is a UFO invasion or alien abductions. Why wouldn't they do that here in America as well?
Because they're patriots, dude.
Because they're patriots. That's right, Joe.
They would never do anything like that to us. They love us. It's the government.
Yeah.
Roads and stuff.
Well, there was a book that came out fairly recently by Nick Redfern, who did a lot of digging about the Rendlesham Forest incident. Back in the early 80s, a couple of Army guys went out into the forest because they saw something crash down. And it was his opinion that those military people did not encounter a UFO. They were actually part of this very elaborate psychological operation. That it was a combination of using like practical effects and drugs to make these guys think that they had encountered a UFO. At which point in time, those guys, at least one of them went back, started reporting things. I don't know to what end. What is the purpose of this, other than to spread misinformation as some sort of cover story, or to see how far this information travels word of mouth? I'm convinced that there's probably been stuff like this that has happened for a long time, like the Flatwoods monster incident, where all the kids and people involved who saw that weird thing on top of the hill and during the Flatwoods monster incident said it looked mechanical. It just looked like a weird mechanical missile that glowed, not unlike what Donald Schrum saw out there in the woods when he was trapped in the tree. It looked like kind of costumes you can make in that day and age. It just makes me wonder what ultimately this is all for. I'm not saying all missing 411 cases are like this. Definitely not. There's some real stuff going on. I think it's a mix of different things here, and it's important.
I think it would be really, really funny. Like if you're at the CIA and you've got these alien costumes and you're just bored and maybe you're just getting into the drug stash that you're about to ship off to, I don't know, California or wherever. And just like, dude, let's do a bunch of this cocaine, smoke some weed, and just pretend we're aliens and go fuck with the Japanese.
Yeah. Very well, good. So, I mean, the last part of this article here about disinformation, Richard Doty is also mentioned multiple times in Valley's books. He is a retired Air Force Special Investigations Officer, and his job was to spread disinformation about UFOs during his time with the Air Force. Spreading disinformation about the reality of UFOs is no secret. And in Doty's case, he admitted to infiltrating UFO circles along with his colleagues, to feed ufologists and journalists lies and half-truths so they would never understand any real truth. I think sometimes maybe the government does things, and these organizations will do things and emulate things they don't fully understand in order to try to understand them. Like they might see genuine alien abductions and say, why are they taking people? And then they go, I don't know. Why don't we start abducting people and see what happens? Maybe we can learn something about what they're doing by emulating exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. That guy keeps jacking off at the bus stop every day at around 2:00.
Why?
Well, let's give it a shot.
Maybe he learned something that we just don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll wait until about 2:30 and then we'll try it.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what's going on there, but I wanted to read the first story with the Missing 411 case in Missing 411 Law, and then actually tell the story of Donald Schrum, what David Paulides mentioned in there.
If you want to join the Slack or Discord, give us an email at ourbigdumbmouth@gmail.com. Check out obdmpod.com for all the social media and donation links. Be a part of the magic.